step into the pool. Don't jump, just step in. So this is just an illustration for the guys to try and persuade them to wear life jackets more. They're just wearing shorts and t-shirts. It's 26 degrees in the pool, so it's really warm. And we're now 2 minutes into this exercise and we've now got 3 people out of the water already. We have not had a team last more than 8 minutes.
An AC-72 can sail faster than the speed limit on Golden Gate Bridge. That's 45 miles an hour. These boats are clocking 50. The huge wing provides all the horsepower, but the turbo boost comes from hydrofoils, or foils.
The foils behave exactly the same as an aeroplane wing does. Just as an aeroplane, when it gets enough velocity, it lifts off the ground. The foils, when they get enough velocity, lift the weight of the boat out of the water. The reason we do that is because all of the hull dragging in the water actually is a large percentage of the total drag of the boat. When you lift it out of the water, the boat goes 10 or 15% faster immediately.
Hi, well, thanks for joining me. We've got some excellent footage here of the first World Cup. This is Miami 2017.
What's the absolute record that you've seen with the Volvo people and also with the rest of your clients?
9 minutes. Okay, everybody out the pool.
Okay, guys, wait for the waves to die down. Well, I know it's a situation which is completely under control, but you have to make an effort not to panic.
This is very different than the America's Cup training. We did a lot of safety training for how to pull guys out of the water, and if the boat was capsized, how you would best recover somebody, but this is at a complete another level.
The actual foils themselves are relatively small. They've got to lift 7 tons, which is the total weight of the boat and crew. But because the boats go so fast, they can be quite compact and still carry that huge amount of weight.
That weight and the pressure on the foils is astonishing. The foils must be able to withstand a minimum 8 tons of pressure to pick up and fly 7.5 tons of boat. During a turn, that pressure rises to 15 tons, the equivalent of 7 family sedans. All this on a piece of carbon fiber about the size of a surfboard.
With the America's Cup, we always had 4 support boats chasing us around, and so help was always nearby, and we always had a diver suited up with ready to jump in the water to help. But this is, you're on your own and you've got to look out for your mates. It's a real wake-up call for everybody involved because the water is warm, the waves are not actually that high, and yet after 7 minutes since the first person went in the water, everybody's out. And so this should be a real call to reality for everybody involved, that if you go overboard without a life jacket, without one of the spin-lock deck vests, it's going to be really hard to survive. I know that's a tricky subject, so I've cooked up something a little bit special. This industrial-sized fan is going to stand in for our squall. So we've got 10 to 15 knots of wind here. Potentially in the downdrafts, we've got 30 knots coming out of this cloud. Now, keep an eye on what's going to happen with these little telltales. At the moment, they're on a beam reach as the boat is sailing northwards, and the blue lines represent the initial position of the wind, right? Now, here comes the cloud. It's been blown across the boat by the synoptic wind, and as it approaches, well, you get a little bit of wetness coming out of the cloud, but you see this massive wind shift. So the wind goes up, big increase in strength, and also a 45-degree wind shift. So if the boat is on a reach, they need to furl up that big masthead code 0 and switch to a jib and start sailing upwind to deal with that 45-degree wind shift. But as it approaches and rolls over the boat, you can see that we're now on a 90-degree wind shift. So that means that the boat is going to have to bear away, and this is what explains all of those squiggles that we've been seeing in the tracker over the last couple of days. As it rolls over the fleet like this, we go from a 90-degree wind shift to 100, 110, 130-degree wind shift. So we can see that the synoptic wind over there is completely dominated by the localized wind coming from the cloud. So that means we've got a tack on the boat. They're now sailing on port, potentially, but the cloud is still blown by the synoptic wind and is slowly moving away. Now, this creates a tricky period of transition, because I want you to keep your eye on the wind here versus the wind here. because as the cloud blows away, you can see that the synoptic wind starts to fill in again here. So we've got wind coming from this side, on this side of the table, and we've got wind coming from this side, on this side of the table. In the middle, we've got all of this turbulent flow, and you can't sail in winds that are fighting each other. There's basically nothing left in the middle. And this explains the massive losses like that we've seen from Mafre, for example.
Now, coming into the windward mark, you can see why Giovanni fancied the left-hand side. Look at that, top left, so much more breeze. And the reason for that is the wind shadow from the city is really reducing the amount of wind on the right-hand side of the course. So Giovanni's done a very, very good job here, and he's now doing the sensible thing. He's going to get on that starboard ley line, and he's going to be safe. He won't mind if Philip goes a little bit further left and perhaps closes the gap, has a small gain, because he knows he's going to be first around the windward mark. And what happens with Olympic class racing, a good position around the windward mark almost guarantees a good finishing position.
Well, I think it's a must, because I said once in this race where we actually had to go on the life raft, and it's just a great help, and it's just a way of familiarising for people who haven't done it.
The only thing that changes is how you look at it. If you've been in a situation like we were with Vestas, you take things more seriously, and you know you need to know this stuff, because you could end up using it before you know it.
And even like I've done it now, I think 8 or 9 or 10 times, can't remember. But every time again, it's just good to be familiarising yourself what it actually is when you're together with a very small team in a life raft.
You know, basic things like counting off and having a plan and sticking together and who's in charge of what. You know, basic things like that is going to save your life.
You're one of the few people in this room that's actually used one of these things in anger. Can you tell me about how closely today's training replicates that experience?
Well, actually, the moment when we had to abandon ship, the conditions were actually way better because it wasn't raining. But you can see over here when it's rain or when there's a huge storm. But in general, I think this probably, especially like the rain, that's bloody annoying.
My name is Ranald Fiennes, and I'm an expedition leader.
Something about that challenge of being on the back foot, and you really have to raise your game, and there are no second chances.
And this particular expedition will be the first attempt ever to cross the Antarctic continent without ever moving beyond the polar winter.
Well, they're going to have to be bloody good, that's for sure. And there are fantastic teams out there, and it's going to be the toughest cup, I think, in many, many cycles.
Competing both individually on the tour and as part of the league with her own Miami Glory team, 34-year-old Georgina Bloomberg is looking for success at her home event.
I think it's a huge honor for me to be a part owner of the only American-owned team, and not only as an owner but also as a rider, and that's something that I really wanted to focus on this year.
The first all-female team in over 10 years to sail in a prestigious global sailing race has hit the ocean, competing against 6 male teams. Newsround viewer Francis Fox, a keen sailor, caught up with the captain in Spain.
So Dee, why is there an all-women's team?
It's been a long time coming. It's been over a decade since there's been a female team. But the big difference is all the boats are identical.
And of course I've watched over the years as various parts of his anatomy have dropped off.
It is the coldest journey on Earth, and its aim is to raise $10 million for Seeing is Believing, which is our charity.
And now here we have this extraordinarily intrepid expedition about to set off into literally the unknown.
I don't see any team cruising through to an easy victory in this cycle. I think everyone's going to have to fight for it, and it'll be the guys that want it the most that will come out on top.
Now imagine the challenge of sailing across the Atlantic. Now imagine doing it and being paralysed from the chest downwards. That's the goal of quadriplegic yachtsman Jeff Holt.
We left the Cape Verde Islands a week ago today. We are now day 19. This is it. This is the culmination of years of dreaming, and here I am back on the ocean, back as exactly as I imagined it. This deep, deep blue sea, these big rolling waves. Wow.
The sheer power of this French machine is incredible. Yet it feels effortless, like being on a TGV, watching the world go by at sublime speeds.
All the sailors here are putting a tremendous amount of time and effort to get here, tens of thousands of hours of work, and just to be here is an amazing achievement. To actually win an event in pre-Olympic year is just superb.
A world title is often tougher to win than Olympic glory, but that hasn't put off the 2012 Olympic bronze, silver and gold medalists from duking it out here in Oman's superb purpose-built sports resort of Masana.
There's a big group of girls that are training really hard and doing really well. And especially in these unique kind of conditions, I think we'll see a lot of girls in there.
The crew of Bank Pop battle at the front with another French try, Gitana.
So Gitana is just there. They already passed us, and we are going to pass them again, so that's nice. It's always a pleasure to round the fast head. That's a rock. Et voilà, et là on accélère.
Downwind, Bank Pop takes off. Crossing the finish line in Plymouth, the crew set a new race record and the outright course record. 1 day, 8 hours and 48 minutes.
If anything, it's a celebration arriving back on that beach, because had I not had the accident, I wouldn't have met my wife, Elaine, we wouldn't have had our son, Timothy. So I'm not looking back at all, I'm looking to the future. It's a day of celebration and I wouldn't change a thing.
After 4 weeks and over 3,500 nautical miles, Impossible Dream made it to the British Virgin Islands, and specifically Cane Garden Bay, that most significant beach in Jeff Holt's life. It was a moment of elation.
Well, it means a lot, really. I mean, it's a celebration of life and sailing the Atlantic Ocean, and what a great finish to a great project.